Yeah, I don't know. It definitely bums me out when I see people that are like super, super talented, but they're like too scared to start a YouTube channel
Right.
because they have it's so like frequent where they have this like perfect vision of what they think they should look and sound like, or like
What's up, everybody? Thank you for tuning in to the podcast today. Today, as you can see, we have Andrew Baena on the show, and Andrew was an awesome guest. I was really happy to be able to talk to him. In this episode, we talked about Andrew as a YouTuber. We also talked about him with Galactic Pegasus, his very first band that he was in since 2012. That kind of started out as a solo project, which you'll kind of find out in the episode. And also about his new band, Carcosa. We covered a lot of different topics. This episode could have gone on for a lot longer, and we will definitely do it again in the future. But anyways, in the meantime, here it is, Andrew Baena of YouTube and Carcosa. Andrew Baena, thank you for coming on the podcast. How's it going, man?
hello, good man. I just asked how you were in the little pregame show, but how are
Exactly.
you?
Well, you know how it is a podcast. It's an obligatory thing. No matter if we were talking for an hour before, 10 minutes before, you got to ask how they're doing. You got to
Yeah,
ask. But
otherwise it's just rude.
yeah, exactly. So the thing that I like to do, Andrew, before like I have a guest on the podcast, is I really like to do my research because I know, you probably get asked the same question 100 times, and I've had other bands on before, so I try to avoid asking, what I like to call the Wikipedia questions, so to speak.
Sure.
But when I went to go do my research on you, I couldn't find any interviews of you other than your own podcast, the Just Noise Boys, where you talk about Carcosa and then just you and Johnny talking together. What's up
Oh,
with
I mean,
that?
we've done a few. I don't know. Maybe it's just like Google's weird algorithm because I put out
Yeah.
so much shit, it doesn't know what to do. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, because I did. I Googled first, like Andrew Baena interview. I couldn't find you anywhere. I went on Apple Podcasts. I couldn't find you. I'm like, oh man, well at least I got a lot of pertinent information from your show when you guys were talking. So
Yeah.
the one thing that I wanted to start off with was I'm a big Emmure fan, as you can tell from my shirt here. I know that you are
Oh, yeah.
too. So just as a little bit of an icebreaker, I know that we've talked a little bit here and there, but just explain to me your Emmure love, when that started, because I never get to talk to anybody who loves this band like I do.
Yeah, they're definitely like a love it or hate it kind of band.
Yes, they are.
It's funny because I actually didn't really like them either until the first album they put out with Josh Travis back in 2017, I believe it was,
Right.
which was called, what was that? Look at Yourself, right?
Yep.
Um, yeah, that was like, I think it was my favorite album of that year. Like, I listened to it fucking nonstop. And before that, I had listened to what was the other one? Speaker of the Dead. I really
Yeah.
liked that one, but it was kind of like this weird, like brief phase where when that album came out, I was like, "Oh, this is awesome," and then I fell out of love with the band for a long time. And
Mm,
then I'm a huge fan of just Josh Travis and Glass Cloud and Tony Danza Tap Dance Extravaganza in general. So
right.
anything he does, I'm gonna listen to it. So when I heard he was in Emmure, I was like, okay, well, obviously I got to check that out. And that's when I got back into them. And yeah, that's so I guess I'm like a born again Emir fan or something like that.
It's so funny you say that because my first ever introduction to them was Speaker of the Dead, but
Yeah,
it was the song "Drug Dealer Friend," which I'm sure you're familiar with how that song probably starts out. I wanna watch you. So
yeah,
yeah, so that was like
yeah.
my first ever intro to them. And back then, I was still kind of into like those, what I like to call like kind of like the gateway bands, I guess. Like Lamb of
Mhm.
God, Bullet for My Valentine, Avenged Sevenfold.
Sure.
So
Yeah,
I heard that, and I was like, what the? I don't want to have anything to do with this. But then it's
yeah.
funny you say that because look at yourself. I watched a random reaction video to Natural Born Killer, and I was like, what is this?
Yeah, yeah,
So
it's funny because it still sounds it's weird because like the stuff with Speaker of the Dead sounds different, but it made me like their older stuff more, if that makes any
Yeah,
sense.
dude,
I
exact
don't know
same
why, even
trajectory
though it's
as
like
me.
not, it's obviously none of the same members except for the Frankie, but
Right.
for some reason, like after I got into that one album, that made me more like it made it easier to go back and listen to their old stuff and be like, oh, there's actually like pretty good songs on every one of their albums.
Yeah, no, that's
Maybe
exactly
not the whole album is great, but like there's at
right.
least a few good songs on each one, I think.
Yeah, no, I did the exact same thing. I was like, oh, I gotta listen to this other stuff, and I went back to like Felony and stuff like that. I was like, wow, like there's a lot of good stuff out there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I know that you've expressed your love for Emmure, so I really wanted to. I never, so for our channel, like my guitar play, you probably are aware that we do reaction videos. Obviously, we've done
Yeah,
a number of ones for you guys, but I bring up Emmure constantly, so it's kind of like the meme at this point. So, um, but for
well, I
those,
think as a vocalist as well, like
yeah,
it makes it's funny because like his lyrics are I don't know if you'd say his lyrics are good necessarily, but the way he delivers them and his flow and his like
right,
it's almost like his character. Like I don't know if he's like that in real life, but like I like to imagine that that's not how he actually is, and that's like his persona. It's almost like he's playing. It's like what's his name? Like
Franz,
Franz from
yeah,
Attila, right? Like I'm sure that that's not how he actually is in everyday life, but it's like a great character and a great marketing thing. Like it makes you want to watch and listen to what he does because it's so like out there.
right,
So from a vocalist perspective, I think that it's probably way easier to get into the band than like a
absolutely,
guitarist because like yeah, I mean their guitar stuff is like it's honestly incredibly easy and like they know that, but it doesn't really matter because it
right.
matches the song. So I don't know.
Yeah, he was the first guest I ever had on this podcast because I was like,
Right.
I gotta start it off with a bang, and I know I asked him, I said, what does a young Frankie Palmieri look like? And he's like the exact same thing, and he was a cool dude. But
Okay. Well.
yeah, but enough about Emmure. Let's talk about you. For those that are not aware, which I'm gonna guess they're probably pretty aware of who you are, but fair to say that you're a YouTuber. I know you've been on YouTube for a long, long time.
Yes.
And now you're also in a band called Carcosa. You used to be in a band called Galactic Pegasus, and you're also a podcast host as well with the Just Noise Boys with Johnny. I
Yeah.
can never pronounce his last name correctly, so I'm not even gonna attempt it. Um, but
It's Ciardullo for
yeah,
future reference.
yeah. Because whenever I see
Um,
like the CIAR, I'm like, is it
yeah.
Ciar Char? But yeah,
It's a very Italian name. For
yes.
sure. His name is also Giovanni, not Johnny, but
Oh,
everyone
really?
just calls him Johnny.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. So he's like really
He's
Italian.
super Italian, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like you said, the thing I'm the most known for, I guess you could say, is
Mhm.
definitely my YouTube channel, which is just under my name, Andrew Baena. So pretty much I just do really like anything to do with like metalcore, deathcore, and
Mm.
guitars, and I guess gent as well. Um, I don't really have any limits necessarily. Like I do a lot of different things. Like I do down-tuned compilations where
Yeah.
I basically just take bands riffs and tune them lower, which sounds, not that interesting, but surprisingly people really like it, which is great for me
That's my
because
favorite series personally. Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely not one that I thought was going to take off as much as it did, but I'm certainly not complaining. So I do
Right.
a lot of those. I do like guitar riff evolutions, which is like
Yep.
pretty self-explanatory, but do learn a guitar riff from every era of a band.
Mhm.
So those are probably like my two biggest series of videos, I guess you could say. But then in addition to that, I kind of just do whatever I want, and it's all on my YouTube channel. Um, and then yeah, the secondary thing is definitely Carcosa. Not secondary as in I don't
Mm.
care about it as much, but just it's a little bit newer. So we
Right.
just released our EP August 19th, I think, mid-August. And yeah, it's our first ever EP. We spent a long time on it, and the reception has been great, which we're very thankful and happy about. And then yeah, lastly, like you said, I do have a podcast with Johnny, who's the singer of Carcosa as well.
Mhm.
We haven't done an episode in quite a while.
Mhm.
We're finding it quite hard to be consistent now that Carcosa
Yeah.
is up and running.
Yeah.
Basically, when we started the podcast, we weren't doing anything with the band, so we had way more free time. So that's kind of taken a little bit of a back seat. I don't think
Mhm.
we're gonna stop doing it necessarily, but it's definitely going to be like a just when we have time for it thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So this podcast, when I first started it, I was like, trying to make it a weekly thing. Because we're also in a band, and I'm just trying to do more content to pretty much make it so people cannot not see us, I guess.
Yeah, that's more or less what I do as well.
Yeah, exactly. So I found that eventually it was getting difficult to. I mean, you got to find somebody for every week. That's a lot harder than some. I'm not Joe Rogan, I can't fly people into a studio in Texas now or whatever. But the one thing that I wanted to talk to you about your YouTube, and a lot of people may not know this, is that your first ever account was actually banned.
Yeah, I'm surprised you know that.
Yeah. Well, I did as much research as I could.
Okay, cool. That's funny. No one's ever asked me about that before. I don't think. Well, I mean, I guess someone did if it was in an interview. I just don't remember.
No, it was you were talking with Johnny and the intro podcast for Just Noise Boys. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I've been on YouTube basically since YouTube existed, which was probably like 2008 or something like that. I don't remember. Long time ago. And obviously, at that time I was like 13 years old, so I wasn't actually like making videos.
Right.
I was essentially just re-uploading stuff I liked, because at the time that's what YouTube was. It wasn't actually like video creators. It was just people like honestly just pirating and uploading stuff. That's really what it was. So basically I would just upload like I don't know, like if I was really into like Linkin Park, for example, then I would upload just like Linkin Park's music videos to YouTube. I don't know why. I think just because they weren't on there at the time. So I was like, oh, I'm just going to upload them myself. And then sure enough, as soon as obviously copyright became a thing on YouTube, they banned my account for, that reason. Like it was just a bunch of music videos. So obviously they banned my account, which makes complete sense. And that's why my first YouTube channel was banned. That's why if you look at my URL, it's like Android Kata 1 instead of Android Kata. And I just literally made the same name and just fucking added a 1 because I'm a genius like that.
I would have loved to have seen your email as soon as like copyright became a thing, and they're like, block, ban, block.
Yeah. I don't even know what it would have been. I think they just straight up banned the page immediately because it had no original content at all. It was only uploaded music videos, right? Like,
right. That's so funny. But then from there, you did eventually have your own account. Obviously, you have the Rise Records video, which is probably one of your more well-known ones, other than some of the covers that you've done with various people. But the one thing I found very interesting, and this is a concept that I think about a lot, is that you mentioned that you had first started doing some videos using like the old Rock Band USB microphone, because I think we're in a day and age now where, like you see people with like, this Shure SM7B or this really nice DSLR or this and that or the other thing, and people are like, well, I can't do a YouTube channel until I have this. I can't record music till I have that. So I just want you to speak on that a little bit.
Yeah, man. Like, honestly, I was just talking about this with someone else, like thinking about how every kid has like a cell phone right now, or almost every kid has a cell phone. And like, that is crazy to me. Like when I was 16 or whatever, like whenever I started recording music, like I might have had a cell phone, but it was literally just to phone people. Like it didn't do anything else.
Right. Yeah.
So like I had to buy a camera, and I was like 15 or 16, so I couldn't afford shit. I had like $100, so I would have to go to like whatever, like Radio Shack or something, and get like the literal cheapest camera that I could possibly get. And back then the cheap cameras didn't even record audio. I don't know why, but so I had like a camera that only recorded video and no audio. And then the way that I recorded my guitars was I had a Rock Band, like if you guys remember the video game Rock Band. It came with a mic because you can like sing in the game. So I literally just duct taped that to like a 15-watt guitar amp and plugged that directly into my computer, and just like one take played all of the guitars. And then I think what did I do for drums? I think I like exported the actual drum sounds from Guitar Pro, which sound like shit, obviously.
Yeah, right.
And I just like somehow layered that all together and like called that a recording. Obviously, it's terrible. I'm sure you can actually probably find some if you look really hard. I probably deleted most of them for the best, but yeah, man, like fuck, if I was like that age nowadays, it'd be like, well, I'd probably have like an iPhone or whatever.
Right.
And it's like, well, that's like a 4K camera, and you can plug an interface into your phone, and the interface is like $20 because it's just like a little thing like this big, and you're good to go. And then like that's so easy. Like I wish I had that when I was a kid. It would have been like such a huge head start. I feel like, yeah. But I guess the caveat for that is everyone has that, so there's way more competition. So it's a little bit of both, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. It definitely bums me out when I see people that are like super super talented, but they're like too scared to start a YouTube channel
Right.
because they have it's so like frequent where they have this like perfect vision of what they think they should look and sound like, or
Right.
like I don't know, like someone starting a YouTube channel from scratch and they want it to look like my videos day one, and it's like, well dude, like that's such an unrealistic goal. Like there's no way that's going to happen unless you dump like thousands of dollars into gear, which like nobody can afford that if you're not making money off music. So yeah, I don't know, it's interesting for sure that if you just with a little bit of creativity, like you almost already have all the tools you need to get started, which is awesome.
Right, yeah, because I mean, creativity is free, and but yeah, it's definitely one of those things where I mean, even like our YouTube channel, we do reaction videos. We're still using a webcam. I'm like, guys, we eventually got to upgrade this a little bit, make it look a little bit better. But I mean,
Yeah.
I just wanted to start, So and I
Yeah,
think,
of course.
yeah, and I think that that's super important. And yeah, because I see that all the time, and obviously I know that you're close with the members from Spirit Box, and we had Mike Stringer on the podcast. Which, by the way, I feel very bad about asking you to reach out to him. As soon as I sent you, that message, I was like, ah, damn.
No, that's all right. It's all right. No worries.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned Spirit Box because I was just gonna say that too. Like, if you guys haven't, I don't know if you mentioned this in your podcast as well, but when we talked to them,
Yeah.
they actually filmed like all of the music videos for their first EP on just an iPhone. That's it. Like no lighting, no nothing, just iPhone. And that's why everything was in black and white, which is so interesting because it looks like it was this really smart stylistic choice, which I mean, I guess it was, but not for the reasons you probably think. It's because it was cheaper, right? And like obviously the average person doesn't know that, and to them they're just like, oh, it looks great. And it does look great, but anyone technically could have done that if you have an iPhone. And
yeah, and they were very creative, and I love like their branding and everything. Like that's something that I look at. I'm like, man, like they know what they're doing, and like even people can make fun of this band too, but I Prevail. I mean, they got it down.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. But no, I thought that was interesting because I remember I asked Mike after, because I was on Twitch listening to Mara Effect Part 3, and I was like, I got to ask you a really important question. What kind of milk was it, though? Was it like whole milk, 2%? What are we talking about here?
Yeah, that was their entire budget for that music video, was just buying like a few jugs of milk, and that was all the money they spent on it.
Yeah, because I mean, they understand the impact of a visual presentation. Rather than, I know, a visualize is better than nothing, but I mean, if you can do some sort of video concept, that's important. But the other thing that you do a lot as well with YouTube is you do a lot of collaborations. I know you do a lot with Nick Nocturnal. Explain like how important that is to not only your channel, but just being a YouTube content creator in general.
I mean, it's pretty important for a lot of reasons. I feel like it's more important in the sense that it's like helping to grow your channel and whoever you're collaborating with when you're smaller. I feel like it's way more important for that.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's more honestly just for fun. Like I only work with a certain amount of people who I have known for a really long time, and like I know they can do a really good job.
Right.
Whereas, when I was younger or starting out, like it was more so like I want to work with this person so we can help each other grow our channels.
Right.
Not to say that I don't like doing that anymore,
Right.
but it's more just like now that I'm not as concerned with growing my channel, I'm more just doing collabs because I like doing them.
Right.
So there's that, and also honestly just like sharing skill sets. Like a big one for me is like obviously I do a ton of stuff with Johnny, again vocalist in Carcosa, but also we do so many videos together on my channel, and there's a lot of things on my channel that probably would not exist if it wasn't for him, and he's fully aware of this. But But yeah, like he just is like a totally different oh my god, guitar player and vocalist than I am. Like I wouldn't be able to do a lot of the covers I've done with him because like I can't sing, and having him, he can sing, so that adds like a whole new thing that I can do on my channel with him, and he's happy because it benefits him because like his channel is still growing, so I'm
Right.
pushing people his way and so on and so forth. And I know he's gotten like a lot of session work and ghostwriting and stuff like that because people have seen him on my channel. So it all works out in the end. And like I guess like what I get out of it is I get someone with a skill that I don't have that I
Right.
can then use on my channel. And what he gets is he gets the exposure and like all the attention and then like the extra work that he might not have had otherwise. So yeah, that's kind of the I guess like a broad explanation of why
Yeah.
collaborations are important.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I think it's also, especially for somebody in your situation where this is what you do full time. I mean, you're not, going to work at the grocery store during the day and then making guitar videos at night. I mean, so
Yeah.
you kind of have to be a little bit more selective in a way of who you're going to work with because, you have a brand to uphold and that's what you make your money off of essentially.
Hmm.
So I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. But okay, we'll move into the music side of it because this is what I'm looking forward to talking to you about is
All right.
Carcosa. But first, before we get there, I wanted to briefly touch on Galactic Pegasus because obviously that's kind of Carcosa was born from the ashes of that, so to speak.
Yeah.
Because I gotta be totally honest with you, man. Like I knew about you and like obviously the down tune and obviously in the breakdowns with the dice videos and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And I knew about Galactic Pegasus, but I never really knew it was what it was. But you guys, if I counted it correctly, have a discography that consists of 32 tracks. If I counted that correctly.
I mean, honestly, I have no idea if that sounds right to me.
Yeah. So I was like very surprised by that. I'm like, oh my god, I didn't realize that this was like
Yeah.
a thing. Is
Yeah.
that?
Well, and that's exactly why we
Yeah.
started Carcosa.
That's what I was gonna say to you. Is that kind of why you found that maybe it was time to make that switch was because somebody like me who like I know that it's like a thing, right? But then I'm like, oh my god,
Right.
like this is like a pretty 2012 it goes back to.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so yeah, so it was my first band ever. Like I was never in a band before GP,
Same here, yeah.
and there was a lot of things that were not planned out because it was my first band. So from the beginning, it wasn't actually supposed to be a band. It was originally like a solo project, which was just myself.
Right.
And then the long story short version of it is that I was asked to play a live show, and I was like, well, how am I gonna do that if I'm just one guy? Like that makes no sense. But I wanted to do it, so that's when I was like, okay, well maybe it'll be a band. And then I had like a bunch of people play the first show with me, and then like none of them stuck around,
Yeah.
or only the bassist was like, okay, yeah, I'd want to do this again. So then it was only him, and then the next show was like all different people again, different people again. So from the beginning, it was I didn't know this at the time, obviously, but it was kind of like doomed to fail a little bit just because it was honestly just confusing because like my solo YouTube videos weren't under Andrew Baena, they were under Galactic Pegasus. Like I used to use that name for everything.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh no, Galactic Pegasus is my band and I'm Andrew Baena. And I like tried to separate it, but it was like after it already existed. So people were just confused.
Yeah.
And then they were like, oh, is this like a real band or is it like covers or like what's going on here? So it was just inconsistent from the beginning. And then over the course of our career, like we released a lot of music, but every single one of our albums has a different vocalist. Every single one has like I think everyone has a different bassist, and two of them have different drummers. Like the only people that were the same were me and the other guitarist Cooper. And Cooper wasn't actually on the first EP technically. He joined after the first EP came out or something like that. So, it was never the same. And we went through like so many style changes. Like we started out in 2012, like you said. So that was when like Gent had like just started.
Right.
So we were like all in on that. And we were like, fuck yeah, like volumes and periphery. Let's just like try and sound like that. And then obviously that didn't work out. And then we didn't really know what we wanted. And then we were like half metalcore, half deathcore, but also tuned low. So it was like a total style change. And then once we kind of like figured out what we wanted, was really like the Dysphoria EP, which we released in 2018 or 17, I can't remember.
Mm.
And that was the first one where Johnny switched to vocals because he was playing bass before that. Weirdly enough, because he's like a way better guitarist and vocalist than anyone in the band. But anyways, so that was the first one where he switched to vocals, and it became the four of us who are now in Carcosa.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of when we were like, okay, like this is way closer to what we want to be doing. Like we're all actually enjoying ourselves. We like the music that we're writing. But we were, you know, we were so far into GP at the time, like it had been like 5 or 6 years in that band. So we didn't want to just like abandon it because it was a lot of work.
Right. Yeah.
And we did like it at the time, but then we kept going with that. And it just seemed like everything we did wasn't really growing the band.
Yeah.
It just kind of like stayed exactly the same no matter what we did, or honestly, sometimes decreased what we did. And we were like, fuck, you know, like, why are we spending all this time and energy and money on this project if we can't really seem to break it through to people? So what ended up being the decision in the long run was like, okay, well, everything I just said to you, I'm like, it's inconsistent. Nothing is the same. We don't have a consistent genre, blah, blah, blah. But now that it's just the four of us, we seem to know what we want. Why don't we just start something new from the beginning, knowing what we want with the members that we want, with like a vision for like, this is how we sound, this is what we look like, this is our name. Not like, oh yeah, it's a solo project, but then it's an album and then it's an EP. Like
right.
none of that. It's just like very clear. It's like, this is Carcosa, it's a band, we play deathcore, and also we like yellow. Like it's just, that's it, right? Like easy to understand. We're like, how can we make this the most simple possible thing for people to get? Because again, like, you know, I've been around for a long time. GP had been around forever. So it was kind of like if people had heard of GP, they either listened to it and liked it, or they didn't give a shit. And there was nothing we could do to change that at that point because it had been so long. Whereas announcing a fresh band from the beginning,
Right.
people are way more likely to check it out because it's new and exciting, right? So that was what we were hoping for, and it seems to have worked, luckily, because obviously we were not entirely sure.
Right. Yeah. And I think it's important because, I mean, obviously you went through all those years and now you kind of found like, you know, you're with the same four guys for a while now and you have the sound that you're like, all right, this is kind of what we're shooting for. But the other thing too that I wanted to also mention was, and I'm trying to think of how to word this without, I'm not meaning to be disrespectful, but the name itself, Galactic Pegasus, how did that kind of like play into it at all? Because do you feel like, because like when I listen to some of the music, I'm looking at it and I'm like, I don't know if the music matches up with the name, kind of.
No,
you know
you're definitely right. And that was another thing we had discussed for sure. Because again, like as I mentioned in the beginning, like this band was not planned out.
Yeah, exactly. No, it just kind of happened.
So like I didn't really think anything of the name when I chose it. I was kind of like, yeah, whatever, Galactic Pegasus, I guess. Sure, why not?
Yeah.
And then, you know, meanwhile, when we released Dysphoria, like if you read the lyrics for that EP, like they're kind of like Carcosa lyrics because Johnny wrote them. Like they're very fucking serious, very depressing.
Yeah.
But then our name is Galactic Pegasus, so people are kind of like, is this supposed to be like a meme or is this serious? Like it was definitely hard to get people to take us seriously. On the flip side, it kind of helped sometimes because no matter who I talked to, they were always like, oh, you're that guy in that like space unicorn band. Like they always kind of remembered something to do with the name. So it was like, well, the name is memorable, but not necessarily for a good reason. So I was like, I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, right?
Well, it's better than like, you know, noun something verb with ing at the end or whatever.
Verb the noun.
Verb the noun, exactly. So the other thing, one more thing about Galactic Pegasus that I wanted to touch on, and I could tell from, you know, your podcast, this is kind of like a subject that you didn't want to go too deep into, so don't go any deeper if you don't want to. But I was very interested when I heard this because for those that may not know, Galactic Pegasus was on a label briefly, and I won't mention the label's name. If you guys want to know, it's very easy to find.
Yeah.
You had mentioned that that kind of you weren't happy with that album that you did with them, and was that because of like a time constraint thing, and then the production obviously wasn't up to your par? What kind of went into that?
Well, honestly, the reason that we didn't like the album actually wasn't anything to do with the label. The things we were unhappy with the label were it wasn't really anything like that noteworthy. It's like the typical stuff you
Right.
hear with any band that complains about it, where it's just like they didn't really help us that much. Like they didn't necessarily do anything that I couldn't have done myself,
Exactly. Yeah.
basically. That was more so the label side of things, but that really honestly had no effect on the album. The album that we didn't like the album for so many other reasons. I don't mind getting into it, but like the brief version of it is, oh man, there's so many. So basically, like that was the first and only album we did with that vocalist, and
Hmm.
none of us were happy with his lyrics. But we kind of didn't have a choice because we were paying for studio time.
Yeah.
And then that's the other thing is like we actually went to like a proper studio for that album. And in all of our opinions, like the end result sounds like way worse than it would have been if we just recorded it ourselves,
Hmm.
which was obviously super disappointing because it was not cheap. It was very expensive.
Yeah.
Um, so it was a combination of like it was disappointing because like Johnny, myself, and Cooper, like we write the instrumentals, or we wrote the instrumentals, I should say. I mean, I guess we still do, but you know what I mean, like for GP. Um, so like we were like we liked all the instrumentals, but then like our vocalist came in and put his stuff on it, and we were just
Right.
like, ah, man, like that is not what I was envisioning this was going to sound
Yeah.
like. So it was disappointing for that reason, and then yeah, the overall production is same reason. Like in our heads, we were like, yeah, it's going to sound epic like this, and then we got it back, and we're like, fuck, like this sounds nothing like what I thought it was going to sound like. And then yeah, it was like, well, it wasn't really a label deadline. It was honestly a monetary deadline where we were like, we've spent thousands of dollars on this. Like we literally cannot afford to go
Oh,
back to this same studio
yeah.
that already gave us a product we don't like and like redo it. So we just kind of had to be like, I guess this is the album, and none of us really liked it, but we just didn't have any other option.
Yeah, man. That would feel defeating to say the
Yeah.
least. I mean, especially a whole album. I remember we did a single. We recorded. So the way that we do it, we record ourselves and we send it out to Lance Prank, who does like he did like Dealer, if we can say that name anymore. We did
Okay.
we Alpha Wolf, all those kind of bands. But I remember our very first single that we ever did. We sent it out, we got it back, and it was one of those moments that I was like, "What the hell?" It was
Yeah.
so awful. I was like, "This isn't even like remotely close to anything that I thought it would be."
hmm
But
Yeah, I mean that's what we do now is we just self-track everything, and we have his name is Ty Kingston. Shout out to Ty if you're listening. But he does all of our mixing and mastering. He's actually also the guitarist in one of Johnny's other fucking 10 bands. He's the guitarist in a band called Bastion. And yeah,
okay,
he mixed and mastered our whole thing, but it was all self-tracked.
yeah. Well, the
Mhm.
production was we've done 3 singles on the channel now, reacted to them, and they're all great productions. So Ty knows
Oh,
what he's
thank you.
doing. Yeah,
Yeah, he's great. We'll definitely be going with him again
yeah.
for whatever's next.
Yeah, I think it's like once you find that guy, it's like why it's like a barber, right? Why go to a new barber unless you have to,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
But all right. So the other thing too, now this is an interesting concept that I had kind of found. Listen, you didn't necessarily say this outright, but just listening to you speak on those other shows, um, like music, you write it for yourself, right? But then YouTube, you're kind of catering to an audience. Explain that dynamic a little bit, because in a way they're both consumption from the viewer, but music is obviously you write it for yourself because you're expressing yourself through it. But for
Sure.
YouTube, it's you're making videos. Like if you do a series of videos and they don't perform, you're not going to keep doing it because
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, it's my job.
right.
Like if it's not this is always a weird one to talk about. I don't mind talking about it by any means. I actually like talking about it, but
Yeah.
it's weird because people often do not share the same sentiment as me.
Hmm.
It's kind of like you know how people accuse artists of like selling out or whatever. Like
Right.
I've always thought that
That's dumb. Yeah.
was fucking stupid. Like it makes no sense.
Yeah. They want to make
And
some
with
money. It's
YouTube,
their job.
exactly. And with YouTube, like that's kind of my approach to it. Is I was
Gotcha.
like, well, this is my job. This is how I make money. So it's like obviously, like don't get me wrong, I like the videos that I do,
Yeah. Right.
but of course, every once in a while, there's going to be a video. I'm not maybe 1,000% happy with it, but I'm like, Well, I have to put out 2 videos this week, so I guess this is the video. And like sometimes it kind of sucks for sure. Like obviously I don't like putting out videos I'm not
Of
stoked on,
course, right.
but it's my job and I have to put stuff out. Like if I don't put
Yeah.
anything out, I will literally be poor.
Right.
So
Right.
that's kind of the way that I treat my YouTube channel is very much as a business, not necessarily as like
Gotcha.
an artistic expression, if you will.
Right.
But then yeah, that's why I like having Carcosa or like my solo EP that I did and stuff like that. Like that stuff, obviously I want it to do well, but like I'm not relying on the income from that. I'm
Gotcha.
doing it because I love it. And if it does well and if it makes me money, then that's fantastic. But
Right.
like it doesn't necessarily matter if it does. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because that's obviously like a very relevant example to the time of this recording is everybody is just totally bashing Fit for a King because they've released 4 singles and everybody's like, what is happening? And I'm like, eventually, guys, like you got to stop playing the bars of 50 people, and eventually you want to make some money. You're a band. This is what you do full time. Like this is you're trying to make some money, and I don't blame them at all for that. It may not be stuff that I'm necessarily into, but I understand the reason why. But
Yeah.
but yeah, man. So moving over to Carcosa now. This is the good stuff here. So now you have the same 4 members, including yourself, from years ago, right, with Galactic Pegasus.
Yeah.
So explain that dynamic a little bit because you guys all seem to be very involved. And whereas I know in my band it's really me and my guitar player are kind of like the band. So
Sure.
explain like your right like the writing process, like who does what. Do you guys all kind of come together? Do you find that to be difficult? If so, just kind of the whole dynamic.
Yeah, so actually Cooper and Johnny are coming over like after this to try and write a new Carcosa song. But
Oh, nice.
basically the one of the other big things that we changed from GP, because again it is the same 4 people.
Right.
The thing that we felt like was a huge mistake, or another of the many huge mistakes we made with GP, was we also didn't write the songs together. Like
Gotcha.
if I tell you this now and you go listen to GP, I guarantee you'll be able to know what I'm talking about. But each song was either written by me, Cooper, or Johnny. Never all 3 of us, never even 2 of us. It was always one of us. So it'd be like I write an entire song, or Johnny, or Cooper.
Oh,
And then
wow.
obviously Johnny wrote vocals over top of all of them as well,
Right.
but instrumentally speaking. And that didn't really work, obviously, because like we have like a similar style, but it's not the same, right? So it kind of again, if you go listen to GP now after you know that, I think it's so obvious like who wrote what. Obviously for me it's a little easier to tell, but regardless. So with Carcosa, we were like, we're not doing that anymore. We want to be consistent, and again, we have a sound in mind for what we want, and we're like, what do we want? We want deathcore with epic ambient orchestral stuff, and that was the loose guideline we set for ourselves. So the 3 of us know it's like, okay, that's the genre we're writing for now. So we all have a guideline of what to do, and also we're all getting together and writing together. So there's a couple of exceptions to that, but for the most part, we've been pretty good at sticking to
yeah,
it.
of course.
Like for the EP that we just released, the first 2 songs were actually entirely written by Johnny. He just couldn't help himself, and he wrote the 2 songs anyways. And I mean, we had the option obviously to change them or work with them, but when me and Cooper both heard them, and Travis as well, our drummer, when we heard them, we were just like, I don't want to change anything. It's really good. So we just ran with them anyways. But for the most part, we try and make it, a collaboration between the 3 of us mostly. So basically the way it works is like the 4 of us will usually get together, and it's really like the 3 of us that will write the song, if you will. And Travis will, he like will say his ideas, but the actual song structure is usually mostly just written by the 3 of us. And then obviously since he's our drummer, he's like way better at drums than any of us are at programming it. So after the song is written, we give him a song or a version of the song that has no drums.
Yep.
And he just like fucks around with it and practices it for like a week or 2. And then he'll come here with his E kit, because I don't have a way to record drums.
That's what we do. Record on an E kit.
Yeah, and we just MIDI plug it into my interface,
Yeah.
and he plays the song, and then I just like make it actually on time.
Yeah, you make it on time, quantize it, all that good stuff.
Yeah, so
Uh,
that's like the quick version of what we do. Yeah, and sometimes it goes really well, sometimes it doesn't. Like we had a writing session on Tuesday, so 2 days ago, and it came up nobody really liked it, and we spent
yeah.
hours on it, and we only got like 50 seconds of material, and we were like, did we want to continue working on this? Like, not really.
Yeah.
And it just happens sometimes, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like it's it's whatever. But yeah, hopefully today does not go like that, but we'll see.
No, man, I know what that. Yeah, we get together once a week on Mondays, and it's like there'll be some weeks where it's like, oh my god, we're on a roll, and then there's other weeks where it's like we can't even like
Yeah,
figure out a transition. You know, it's just like it
yeah,
just
yeah,
happens. But
yeah. Well, yeah, and like the first single we released, which is called "A Plague,"
yeah,
like that was the first song we ever released. It was also the first song we ever wrote, and
yeah,
we just happened to write that entire song in like 2 hours. Like it
yeah.
was so easy. It just happened. I don't know why. But then like Our Scars, which was the second single, was like way more of a strenuous process, and like the end result we're obviously happy with, but like it took a long time to get there because like it was very all over the place, and we're like, how do we make this make sense? But sometimes you just have a song that just happens to just work immediately. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, I will say that that strenuous process paid off because that's actually my favorite track of the three that I've heard
Oh
so
yeah.
far. Yeah, that Our Scars is, yeah. So yeah, because yeah, that's got to be really nice though to have a bunch of members that can play different instruments. Because for us, I call myself a voice memo guitar player. You know,
Okay.
I don't know anything about. I cannot play guitar. I'm just a vocalist. I write lyrics. That's kind of the extent of it. So that has to be nice having a bunch of members who can kind of offer up a bunch of
Yeah,
different ideas that actually
definitely.
make sense and have right timing instead of just a voice memo that's like, oh, that's a nice riff, but
You're like,
it's in it's
yeah,
in
sure, I can totally do
yeah,
that.
it's in 6/4 timing. What do you want me to do? But
Yeah.
no, that's got to be nice. But so
Yeah, it's definitely handy. It's also interesting for sure because
yeah,
again, since Johnny is the vocalist, when he writes guitar parts, like he doesn't really care how hard they are because he doesn't have to play them, and then me and Cooper have to be like, hold on, don't think that that's, I mean, for our skill level, actually possible to play. Like we might need to change it a bit, and then
right,
there's things like that, but it's definitely super awesome being able to have multiple people that know what they're doing for sure.
yeah. So Carcosa, you have an EP out now titled Absent, which came out on August 19th. 5 tracks.
Hmm.
Um, your influences when I hear you guys, obviously there's the deathcore sound, but and I know that Johnny is a big Acacia Strain fan, and that
Yes.
is like I don't know why, but like I heard you guys and I was like Acacia Strain, like I heard that influence come through right
Okay.
away. Is that a good assumption, a good
Yeah, I mean that's definitely mostly a Johnny thing.
yeah,
Like I like that band for sure, but
right,
like I don't listen to them that much. I listen to like a
right,
couple songs off of each album, but never like I'm never like, oh my god, the album start to front.
right,
They're not that band for me personally. I think
gotcha,
they're
yeah,
amazing though. Like they have really, really good songs. It's just not a band I can listen to nonstop. Whereas
right,
Johnny, like I'm pretty sure that's his favorite band of all time. I'm pretty sure at least. But
yeah,
and especially with like Vincent, their vocalist,
oh
like
yeah,
he clearly takes a lot of influence from him vocally as well in terms of like what topics he writes lyrics about as well as like how
hmm
he learned how to do vocals. Yeah, and it's funny because the one that we have actually heard the most from comments is that we sound a lot like Chelsea Grin, which is interesting to me
okay,
because
yeah,
none of us even like thought that while we were writing at all. Like none of us were like, yeah, like we weren't trying to write like Chelsea Grin.
hmm.
But as soon as someone told us we sound like them, I was like, I 1,000% can hear that. And then it makes a lot of sense too, because again, we actually wrote this entire EP in the summer of 2019, so a year ago,
Oh wow, okay.
and we were listening to Chelsea Grin's newest album like
Right.
a lot when we were writing it.
Interesting.
So I think that's why. I'm not really sure. It's just funny because like you know, when you're a band, you have to like always talk about your influences, and that was like never one that any of the four of us ever said. But then as soon as we released the album, everyone was like, "Oh, Chelsea Grin." I was like, "Yeah, I guess so."
Yeah, it subconsciously came through.
Yeah,
That's very interesting.
yeah,
So the other thing too that I this is a branding question about Carcosa now, because I know that with you, you know, when I say Andrew Baena, a lot of people are going to obviously go to like the video types, but then they'll eventually get to the green guitars, the green
yeah.
imagery. So I'm interested. Was the yellow text for Carcosa deliberate in that way? And why didn't you stick with green? Obviously, I know it's not you. Like, I know that you're not the band, but
Yeah, well, that's exactly why we didn't do green, is because again, like I was
gotcha.
kind of saying with GP, it was always a little fuzzy. It's like,
Right.
is it a solo project? Is it covers? Is it original songs? So I wanted to make it very, very fucking clear that it was not like
Opposite of green.
my band, if you
Right. I
will, or
gotcha.
like, I mean, like I don't. I'm sure for the other guys too, like it must get kind of annoying if they're like, "Oh, Andrew's band," and it's
You're
like, I
right.
don't really want that to be the thing, if you will.
Yeah.
Like I know it's gonna happen because like I'm a YouTuber that's, I mean, honestly more well known than the other guys in the band, and that's just the way it is. Obviously I don't mind that, but the rest
Yeah.
of the guys I'm sure think it's kind of annoying.
Yeah. I can.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I just wanted to make it super clear that it was not a me thing, or at least
Yeah.
not like a me only thing or a me first thing. Like I
Like
wanted to make sure that it was seen as a full band and not my thing, basically.
right. So basically, not Andrew Baena and the Carcosas, essentially,
Yeah, exactly.
right?
And yeah, and easy. Luckily for me, you know, like you said, I have the whole like green theme on my channel. So a really easy way to make it branded differently was to just literally not use green. And
Yeah.
the reason why we chose yellow, in addition to not wanting green, is also because the name Carcosa comes from a TV show. Well, it doesn't come from this TV show, but we saw a TV show called True Detective.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen it, but the first season of that show is all about Carcosa, more or less. And then in Carcosa lives the Yellow King, so that's why we did everything
Oh.
yellow.
Nice. Well,
Yeah.
that's interesting. That's very
Mhm.
interesting. And your logo is actually very decipherable for a deathcore logo.
Yeah.
Because I had my girlfriend, I was like, "What do you think that says?" And she's like, Carcosa. So, yeah,
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that
yeah,
because that was definitely one of the things that I fought for very hard with some of the other band members. Because I don't know if you saw Galactic Pegasus logo, but it's
yeah,
like fucked. It's
yeah,
like completely unreadable,
yeah.
which looks sick. But I was like, dude, like, how is anyone ever gonna remember what this looks like? So with Carcosa, we wanted it to look like a deathcore band, which I think it does,
It
but we
does.
also wanted it to be very, very readable.
Right.
And I'm very happy with the way it turned out. I think it's like the perfect balance of brutal but also legible. And I'm happy to hear that apparently your girlfriend agrees.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she listens to like the front bottoms and stuff like that. So
Okay.
she's very outside of this sphere. So for her to be able
Sure.
to read it, I think the yellow probably honestly helps that too.
Yeah, I mean it's a nice bright color, and again, it's also like it wasn't necessarily done for this reason, but it's nice that not very many bands use yellow.
No. Yeah.
That was just like a happy coincidence because again, we mostly chose yellow because it made sense with the name Carcosa. But yeah, I can't really think of any bands that jump to mind when I think of yellow. So that's like a
Done.
happy secondary accident, if you will.
Well, there's actually, yeah, there's a thing that I read. It's actually like a psychology thing too, that yellow is like the first color that humans tend to like
Oh,
notice
really?
in like a collection of colors. So I
I
didn't
thought
know.
it would have been red for some reason, but okay.
Yeah, yeah, but I didn't know if like you were like maybe like, oh, the psychology of the band.
No, we didn't get that deep.
Yeah,
I
I was
wish
gonna
we
say, dang. But a few more things and I'll get you out of here, man. I kind of wanted to jump back around to the rebranding too, going from Galactic Pegasus to Carcosa. Now, maybe this obviously, from what you explained, it didn't sound like it had anything to do with it, but did your own personal brand and Johnny's brand, and then obviously the other members as well, did that make that transition a little bit easier on you guys, knowing like we have this outlet
Oh,
between us to make this rebranding and people will know who we are?
yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. Like I was just saying, like I wanted to make it clear that it wasn't my band, if you will, but
Yeah,
also I knew that obviously we were going to use my fan base, Johnny's fan
of
base, and
course.
Galactic Pegasus is fucking hate saying the plural of that
Yeah.
name. Yeah, I don't have to anymore. But yeah, so like that was definitely a huge comfort. Like we knew that we obviously had like a pretty big head start because of all that. You know, I don't want to pretend like we started from the bottom or something. Like I know that that's not the case.
Right, right.
But you know, I mean, nonetheless, we were still nervous because like you never know, right? Like I don't know if my fan base would like it. I don't know if Johnny's fan base is gonna like it. We
Yeah.
knew that we had people to show it to, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're gonna like it, right?
Hmm.
So yeah, we knew that. But then in addition to that, even though we knew we had like my fan base and Johnny's and so on and so forth, we also chose to release the songs on Slam Worldwide and
Yeah.
not our own channels. And that
Right.
was also very much on purpose because another thing that we found with GP was that since everything to do with GP was always hosted on my channel, it was always like guitarists were the fans, which is
Yeah.
not necessarily a bad thing, but like it's not like Carcosa is like a technical guitar
Right.
band. So
Yeah.
I was like, well, I don't really want guitarists as like our primary audience. We just want people
Right.
that like the genre, not necessarily like playing guitar. Like both is fine, but I would rather just have it be people who like the music and not people who are like, oh, like, yeah, what guitars are you using in that video or whatever. Like, I mean, people are going to care about that regardless, but I didn't want
Right.
that to be the focus, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, because what I have found, especially obviously being in a band with a guitar player, they tend to be like Riff City, like that. You know, I know that you're a guitar player as well, but like a lot of, especially like gent kids, you know, they're kind of like, oh,
Yeah.
where's the technicality? I'm looking for that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And like we didn't want that because that's not really
Right.
what we're doing anyways. Like
Right.
I mean there's a couple songs that are definitely like it's not like our stuff is like super super
Of
easy,
course. Right.
but
Right.
it's not incredibly difficult either. It's like it's pretty like, you know, middle ground.
Yeah.
There's a couple songs that get pretty hard. Like Our Scars is definitely the hardest song.
Yeah.
Which is ironic because there's like there's not really that many notes in that song, but just like the patterns that we play are like
Mm.
fucked. Like it's so hard to memorize,
Well,
especially because again Johnny wrote them and he doesn't have to play them, so he did not care what it was. And me and Cooper were just like fuck.
well, at least you have plenty of time to prepare to play live again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Whenever that happens again. Hopefully, well, you're in Canada, so maybe it'll happen a lot sooner than me down here in the States.
Yeah, or yeah. Well, I mean, apparently there's bands touring the states right now and advertising
Really?
it as a peaceful protest. So I don't know.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah,
Uh,
some good old Christian bands. You
oh yeah,
know?
oh man. So yeah, I mean, a couple more things, and I'll get you out of here.
All right.
The one thing, obviously, like it's kind of been a little bit of a hot topic is Spotify, and obviously, I'm sure that you saw with the guy Daniel Ek came out saying, you know, about like artists need to release more music more frequently, and for me personally, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Where do you stand on this, on that kind of issue there?
Yeah, I 100% agree as well. I saw just as many musicians as you did, I'm sure, sharing that article and
Oh yeah,
saying "fuck this" or
yeah. It's
whatever.
just insane. Yeah,
But you can't change the industry. Like the industry is the way it is for a reason, and if you're not going to adapt to that, then I think you're kind of fucked, unfortunately. Like I understand, I guess in an ideal world if you could somehow make your own market or something like that, but that's just not realistic. That's not the case.
yeah,
Like if even the biggest musicians in the world follow what the industry standard is, like guess what? You got to do it too, man. Like I'm
yeah.
sorry, but that's I don't really understand what you're fighting for, you know what I mean?
Right,
Um,
right.
so I really like Spotify. I know some people don't like it, and I kind of understand, but I mean, I have no problem going on record and saying, like, I mean, I have multiple different revenue streams, but out of streaming revenue, Spotify pays by far the most, like way, way, way more. And a
Yeah,
lot of people will point that out and be like, but how can that be? Because they pay X amount of cents per stream or whatever. And the reason is because the most people use Spotify. So it's like, yeah, they're paying the least per stream, but way more people use it. who wouldn't listen to my music otherwise. So I am actually making more money than I would in the first place. So like, I just don't understand how it's a bad thing. I don't
Right.
know. Like I'm making money from that I wouldn't make if I was like only on Apple Music. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah, I've seen, you know, and this isn't meant to be an unkind comment, but it's like, guys, like, do you really think people would like go buy your? I mean, I'm not saying that to be like mean, but it's like streaming is a very easy way for you to, for people to listen to your music and give it a chance. Whereas if streaming didn't exist, I mean, how many people are gonna like buy your album? You know. So
Yeah. Well, and think of it this way, like I don't know why the music industry is always seems to be so far behind, but like when like video games, like let's
yeah,
use that for an example. Like who buys physical video games now? Like not that many people. It's
no,
only the hardcore collectors,
right,
which is the same as music. And
right.
nobody really complains about the video. I mean, maybe they do, but I don't see it nearly as often. Like the Xbox literally just announced a console that doesn't have a disk drive, and everyone's like, "Yeah, that makes sense. Like
Right.
no big deal. It's
Yeah.
all good." And like it's just fine, you know. But with music, it's I don't know. It's just like I don't really know why it's such a passionately debated thing. I don't know. I don't
Yeah,
really get
and
it.
especially you narrow it down from the music industry, and then you narrow it down to metal, and then it's like that's a whole
Yeah.
other can of worms. But I mean, we could talk about that forever. But
Yeah.
I mean, the long and short of it is, though, people got to stop sharing that, saying that they should pay the artist $1 a stream because it's what
Yeah,
September
that's never gonna
10th.
happen.
It's September 10th. They'll be out of business September 11th. I mean, if
Yeah.
we would have like 500 grand if that were to happen, and I'd be like,
Yeah.
that'd be great. But
I would literally be like a multimillionaire if that was the case, and that's clearly not going to happen.
it's like, what? Are you out of your mind?
But I mean, don't get me wrong, that'd be great, I guess, but
Yeah.
like it's just so unrealistic.
Exactly. Well, man, one more thing. What can we expect from Carcosa moving forward? I know you guys are obviously grinding away, doing some stuff. I know you just released an EP, but obviously with the way that music is nowadays, you could release another song tomorrow if you wanted to. So
Yeah, we don't have any like dates planned. We are trying to have another single out before the end of the year.
nice.
However, that single does not exist yet, so we'll see how that goes. That is again why they're coming over in like an hour.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that goes. Ideally, we would like to have another song out this year. If we don't, though, we have honestly quite a few things left to post still, just like, you know, to support the EP. We're also filming 2 more guitar playthroughs today.
Oh, nice.
We're going to be filming like live vocal playthroughs of Johnny doing every song on the EP. He's already done 2.
He's
So we'll have
crazy.
like,
He's
you know,
good. He's
basically
so
2
good.
videos for each song on the EP. We also have one more like bigger video, if you will. I don't know if I would. I want to call it a music video, but it's technically not.
Okay.
You'll see what I mean in a while.
Okay.
But
All
that'll
right.
be
All right.
out sometime soon, like a few weeks, a month or so. Yeah, and then we're also going to just be putting out more merch, and yeah, that's about it. We have a pretty cool merch drop coming on September 14th. I don't know when this is going live, but
This will come out the 15th. So
okay.
yeah, the 15th. So yeah.
All right, we dropped a new merch thing yesterday. Go check it out then. I guess I can talk about it then. Yes, it's going to be. It's a collaboration with Brand of Sacrifice, Slaughter to Prevail, I Declare War.
So that's what that was that you shared.
Yeah,
Okay.
and one other band I'm forgetting the name of, unfortunately, right now. But yeah, so it's only tie-dye, and only hoodies, and they're only available for 2 weeks. So if you're interested in that, go check it out. I kind of want to buy one of each band's because they all look really sick, but we're included in that as well somehow, and I'm very happy to be on the list of big deathcore names like that.
Cool. Well, we better see a lot of yellow in that merch. But
there's a bit.
yeah. All right, guys. Well, make sure if you're not already subscribed to Andrew Baena's channel, go over to YouTube, subscribe to his channel, pick up their EP Absent, which came out back in August, and also they do have a podcast. But you know, sometimes a lot of stuff gets in the way. But go check that out anyway. That's its own separate YouTube channel, the Just Noise Boys. Andrew Baena, thank you so much, man, for your time, and we'll have to do this again sometime in the future.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me, man.
Thanks. Wait, I have to tell you before you go. Really appreciate you listening to the entire podcast, And listen, if you want to support us, support TrueShot, support the show, support the band, go on over to our Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter accounts at TrueShot Band. Hit us up on Patreon, patreon.com/TrueShotOfficial. Go over to Twitch, twitch.tv/TrueShotOfficial. And if you want to help with the podcast, leave us a review, share it with your friends, all that good stuff, because the platforms suck. They don't promote us. So thank you so much. Have a good one. Stay safe, and hope you enjoyed it.